I'm Tom Carter, and my wife of 17 years is Ruth Carter. We got married young and in a hurry. We planned on waiting, but when my Ranger unit, a detachment of the 82nd Airborne, was called up for deployment to Iraq in 1991, we decided to take the plunge. At the time, Ruth was 20 and I was 25. Ruth, who's quite petite, has tawny hair and might be considered a bit plain by some, but I find her curves and softness incredibly attractive. What truly sets her apart, though, is her radiant personality. I've been head over heels for her ever since we first met at a Cal-Tech exhibition years ago. As for myself, I'm on the slender side, around 5'9" and never weighing more than 165. I'm no standout in the looks department, but I've accepted that's just how it is. With a degree from Cal-Tech and experience as a combat engineer in the Army, I, Captain James C. Carter, was a natural fit for a role at Harding Engineering Incorporated when I returned from the war. The company has strong ties to the government, and it was the job I'd been eyeing for years. I was hired almost immediately after I was discharged in late 1992, fulfilling a long-held aspiration. A few years later, Ruth and I began the next campaign together, that of engineering a family. Irene, now 12, was our first success in that regard. She was followed 2 years later by Charlie, now 10. As I said, I adore my woman. She was and is sexy, she was and is fun, and she is mine, at least for now. Sex from the beginning has been virtually nonstop and varietal. Well, it was until very recently. It all seemed kinda sudden to me. The onset of headache disease on the part of my wife. More, lately it has seemed, that every time I make a move to make love to her, she's had an excuse. Headaches, her period, fatigue from her long 4-hour a day at the used car dealership. More about that shortly. It's always some damn thing. It's been almost a month now since the last time I was allowed to give it to her, and when I did, and I'd had to beg, she just laid there like a lump enduring it. I knew something was wrong, but the obvious had not even entered my mind at that point. Okay, I'm a dumb idiot when it comes to her, at least I was. I had been thinking about things all day, and I now realized, in hindsight, our troubles, mine at any rate, had begun 2 months ago, when Ruth laid it on me that she was going to get a job during the day while the kids were in school. I was not thrilled by the idea, but I had no good reason to deny her other than my personal preference for a wife to be a homebody. She said she was bored. I said get a hobby. She said she was, one that paid. She ended up as a girl Friday at Landmark Auto, a used car dealership in town. The pay was okay, and the work not especially taxing. For a while things seemed to be fine, except of course that her sex drive had gone from frantic to practically zero. Today, I decided to make her sit down and talk it out. Something had to give, and her job was very high on the list of options. That, since I now recognized that her starting work was the beginning of the whole mess. I had taken the half-day off to talk with her. I wanted to do it before the kids were due to be picked up at 3:30. I pulled into the drive and noticed that the trash had been picked up, so I decided to take the empty can to the back, save myself having to do it later. I ducked into the garage and wiped my dirty hands on the rag engine by the door. The sight that greeted me was stunning. Parked in my space in the closed garage was a vintage red Corvette. Not the kind of car often seen anywhere, but virtually never on our street. I had a bad feeling. The door to the kitchen from the garage was ajar. I went through it. The noise emanating from the front room killed my heart. Do me. I need it. I heard her say. The her was my wife. For some seconds, I don't know how many, I stood there in the kitchen, my mind a chaos of a dozen swirling emotions. I gathered myself. I went into the front room. She was leaning forward with her hands on the easy chair, my chair. She was naked and her legs were splayed wide. He was behind her pile driving her. I stood there watching the woman, who I had never before doubted, betraying me. I knew the man, met him. He was her boss at the dealership, Hank Cooper. He was married with kids too. Well, what they were doing explained the decline in my sex life. Their backs were to me, and they hadn't heard me, not yet. Mabel? I managed. God, I must have sounded like an idiot. The man's head whipped around. To say he was startled was a total understatement, at first, but then he just smiled. Sorry, man. I couldn't resist this nice little wifey of yours. He didn't appear worried. Well, why would he have? He was at least 6'6" and maybe 280, that he was wrong in his self-confidence notwithstanding. I stared at him more stunned than anything else. Anger would soon replace those initial feelings. But, for the moment, I was completely at a loss. Ruth, by now, had stood and turned to face me. She grabbed for the towel she'd evidently brought into the living room from the bathroom. She covered herself. She too got over her initial surprise quickly and offered me the same condescending smile that her lover had. Tom, you're home early. Well, it was going to happen sooner or later, she said. Ruth? What are you doing? Is this the end of us? I know this guy. He's married. He has kids. We have kids. I don't. I was more or less making sense, but I was not standing up for my rights, or for my family's rights. But, in my defense, I was in a state of shock. It was the worst moment of my life. The end of us? No, Tom. In fact, it's a good thing. I love you, Tom. But frankly, and I don't mean this to hurt you, you don't do it for me in bed anymore. You and I need to talk. But I promise you, I'll make this right by you. You'll just have to give me a chance to make you understand. That's all. Hank, you need to go. Tom and I have a lot to discuss, she said. Yeah, I guess that's so, he said. He gathered his stuff together, pulled on his pants and shirt, and left by the kitchen door into the garage where he still had his car to retrieve. I heard the garage door opener engage and the sound of the powerful engine gun as he pulled out into the street and was gone. Pour yourself a drink, Tom. I'll be down in a few minutes, she said. Her giving me orders was new. She'd never talked to me like that before. I was feeling insulted. No, hurt. She joined me in maybe 5 minutes. She started laying it on me as soon as she'd taken her seat. I had already downed a shot of vodka. I poured myself another one. Tom, to answer your earlier question again. No, this doesn't have to be the end of us unless you want it to be. But, I need to tell you, I intend to keep on having my time with Hank. If you want to stay married, I will be thrilled to agree. But, if you want a divorce, then, that'll be okay too, she said. Ruth, this isn't right. I started to say. Tom, deal with it or leave. It's that simple. If you want a divorce, I'll take the house, half of the savings, reasonable alimony and child support, and you can have your freedom. I'm sorry you had to see that today. You didn't deserve that. I should never have allowed him in the house to screw me, my bad. But, in a way it's good because now I won't have to be sneaking around anymore, she said. I looked at her. Who was this woman? I sure didn't know who it was. I sat there speechless for a long time, at least it seemed like a long time. My marriage was deader than the proverbial doornail. I knew it if she didn't. Tom, are you all right? I honestly do feel bad that you saw that. I didn't want to hurt you. You're a good man, just not what I need in some areas. Hank feels that missing something that need. He's worthless every other way, she said. You are twice the man he is other than when it comes to sex. And, you and I can still do it sometimes. I don't intend to cut you off completely, but, well, it won't be as often as maybe you might want, I'm afraid. What? Why are you? I said. Jesus, I was so shocked that I did not have a clue what I was doing or saying. I just couldn't seem to get a hold of myself. I would at some point. I had to, but for the moment she was in the driver's seat, and I was getting my butt kicked. Tom, if you need to find a woman, to take the edge off, like on the side, be my guest. I can't very well object to you doing what I'm doing, can I? She said. It was clear she was feeling proud of herself for being so magnanimous with me. But I love you, not somebody else. You love me, don't you? I said. Of course I do, Tom. I will always love you. It's just, the sex with you, well, it's just not like it used to be, darling. Get your head around that and you'll see. We can get by this little mistake of mine. I mean this thing today, she said. We can deal with this. It's just a sex thing. Nothing more. She actually got up and tried to kiss me at one point. I just pushed her away. You are lucky I did not act on my rage. So, do not push it, Ruth. You might never be able to have the proverbial sex ever again. She looked at me and said, I promise not to flaunt it in front of you again, Tom. You deserve that much consideration at the least. Are we okay? She said. I have to go get the kids. The clock on the wall read 3:15. I needed to get out of there. A bad feeling I hadn't had since the war was coming over me. I'll take them to get pizza. I'll bring pizza home. I need to. I didn't finish saying whatever I was going to say. I just rose and left. She was smiling benignly. My stomach was settling. A new emotion was finding its way into my mind and heart, anger. The kids ran to me. Irene was in her last year of grade school. Charlie would have one more to go. They were the perfect age. They were for me at any rate. I couldn't lose them. The upshot of that was that I would have to put up with my new status as Ruth's cuck, at least for now, in order not to lose them. She'd made that clear. She'd take the kids and most of our material possessions if I made any waves. I had to think to plan. The army had taught me how to plan surprise assaults. It's how I had nailed those Iraqis in the desert west of the Euphrates. It would be time to plan soon. I just didn't have it in me today. All I had today was the unholy tastes of bile and betrayal. I'd never talked much about my time in the Middle East. Not even to Ruth. And, in point of fact, She'd hardly ever mentioned it to me or questioned me. It's how I'd wanted it. Too many good men wouldn't be coming home from those wars. Talking about the war was something all of us brothers in arms just knew not to do. Ruth didn't even know about my silver star. She never would now, not from my mouth. "Daddy," said Irene with sauce all over her chin. "I love you," she said. "Me too, Dad," said Charlie. "Daddy, why is Mommy so bored all of the time?" "I mean with us," said Irene. "Is she having sex with that other man?" I stopped with my iced tea halfway to my lips. "Bored? Sex?" "Yes, Dad. She doesn't come to anything at school anymore. She's too busy since she started working at the car place, Daddy," said Charlie. "That guy is at our house sometimes when Mom picks us up and we get home. He really tries to make us like him. But I don't like him no matter what. But he never stays long after we get there," said Irene. "They talk a little, and then he leaves. I think they have sex, Dad." "Yeah, Dad, and she's always late picking us up too," said Charlie. I had been getting madder and madder inside, but now I was getting just plain mad. Her little games with Grimelicker were affecting not only me, but our children. If they had figured out in their little prepubescent minds what was going on, it had to be pretty blatant. The only dummy who didn't seem to be in on the joke was me. Well, I was now. "I'll talk to her about it, kids. But I'm sure she's not bored with you. And no, your mom and I are married. She isn't doing the bad thing with him. I'm sure of that," I said. I hazarded a weak smile. Irene looked at me funny. Can't fool a kid. I delivered half a pizza to the house and Ruth smiled her thanks. "I should have gone with you," she said. But I could tell her words were just formula pap without substance. She'd obviously showered and she looked good. Well, she always looked good to me. That would never change. During the next days, I went to work. I made a living. I came home, and dinner was usually ready. I had not dared to ask her about her picking up the kids late all of the time or mention their suspicions. 1, I was afraid she'd become enraged and go off on me. And 2, for the life of me, I was afraid that by the end of our next fight, I will be in jail and she would be 6 feet under. Okay, I admit it. My tears were almost constant at night now. She caught me last night. It was humiliating. "Tom, are you crying? Tom?" she said. She had a disgusted look on her face. "No, I just have something in my eye." "I'm fine," I said. I was so transparently lying that it wasn't even funny. She sat down, set her lips and spoke. "Tom, for heaven's sake be a man. You're acting like a little boy." She threw up her hands in mock despair. "Look, I know I hurt you. But it's nothing for you to worry about. I mean my having sex with Hank. He's no threat to you. Not in any meaningful way. Now, please act like a man, please. All of this whining and crying has got to stop." "Okay." Her last words were delivered in an almost kindly tone, like she was soothing a child's hurt feelings. I have to admit it. I was only a few nanosyllables shy of actually taking her out her right then and there. She had no idea. I walked out to protect myself from jail time more than keeping her alive. It was the next morning, Saturday. I was outside working on my car. I had to do something to keep from going insane. The conversation the night before had killed all hope whatsoever of my ever forgiving her and letting her off the hook. She'd be lucky if she didn't actually end up in a brothel in Thailand before I was through. At least that's the way I was thinking at that moment. And, as for Grimelicker, he was going to get special treatment. Maybe a sex change. My mind was rambling, I knew, and filling with outlandish images of revenge. Cheating on me was one thing, but they were going far beyond the pale in the doing of it. Her using the kids to blackmail me was the only thing keeping her in the saddle. I had to unhorse the 304, and that sooner rather than later. Done messing with the radiator hose, I decided to head out toward town. I needed some stuff. I was able to find what I needed in no time. I was an engineer after all. Nathan Diaz had been with me in the 82nd. He owned an electronics shop in town. Shit, man. Bummer. I can't believe she'd do that to you. Anyway, this stuff should get you some of what you need. "Tom," he said, and he paused. We got friends. Friends who don't make mistakes and handle bullshit like this. Just say the word. You'll have full deniability." "No, Nathan, I ain't going that route." I thought about it. "But, no," I said. "You still sleeping with her?" He said. "Yeah, so far. I'm doing my best not to make waves. But, there's no sex. I am not even touching her. Every once in a while, she come to give me a peck. I just pull off. She makes my skin crawl. I know she might accuse me of something and put me in jail. She is capable of that. I am not willing to lose my kids to her." I said. Nathan nodded. "What about him?" He said. "Grimelicker? I haven't figured out what I can do to him yet, but he is definitely never far from my mind," I said. How about telling his wife? Said Nathan. You say he's married with kids too. Yeah, that would probably handle him, at least partly, but I would still lose in having to battle Ruth. I want them both to go down. Hard, I said. I got home about 2 hours later. The stuff I bought was still in the car. She had to be gone for me to install it. A piece of cake, maybe an hour's work. I wasn't sure what good any of it would do, though. Adultery was reprehensible, but not legally reprehensible. The lawyers and their lawmaking had seen to that. It was almost like they wanted to protect the guilty. Lawyers and politicians had to be the most contemptible cadre of human beings there was. I knew could prove the hell out of it, the adultery that is, but it probably wouldn't mean shit in the final analysis. I had to hope that my sweet little hooker of a wife would slip up big time. Somehow, I came into the service porch and headed for the frig in the kitchen and pulled me out a beer. I needed something a lot stronger, but for the time being I wasn't going to be doing too much drinking. I needed my wits about me to make war. It was the 82nd against a hooker and her pimply but high school grime liquor. I almost smiled at the thought. The 82nd were the most highly trained warriors in the world. Hell, how could I lose? And if it got physical? Grime liquor was in for a major surprise. Yeah, how could I lose? Okay, my heart was already in the tank, but whatever was left was going to be real hard for the two of them to deal with. As I was taking my first sip, she came in. Oh, I didn't hear you come in, she said. I didn't say anything. I just shrugged. Tom, we aren't going to have another scene like last night, are we? She said, not unkindly. I shrugged again. I guess not, I said. I don't have much choice, do I? Tom, shake it off. Okay, you're supposed to be some kind of soldier or something, aren't you? What about all of those guys that got killed and stuff? I bet they weren't as emotional as you're acting when they were dying, she said. Now, she had gone too far. She saw the steel in my eyes as I set my beer down. She noticeably quailed. I didn't realize it, but I had taken a step toward her, a menacing step. 11 stinkies had met their maker and had gotten their shot at the promised 72 virgins. And that, at my very singular hands in that desert that day. I made sure that they did not even get the chance to feel the pain of my bullets, except for the two who had to endure my knife on their throats. My squad had gotten the 2 nurses back, and damned near been court-martialed for the doing of it against orders. But General Jones had gotten involved, and me and my 4 brothers had gotten silver stars instead. Ruth, no matter what you ever do to me, now or in the future, never, never, never again mention my brothers. If you do, you won't. I was talking so low and slow that she realized that she had overreached herself. Okay, sheesh, touchy, she said, interrupting me. I was glad she did. I was about to tell her that I would kill her. That would not have been good. I could tell she got the message, though. She actually shivered. I have to go, she said. Sheila and I are going shopping. I'll be home kinda late. You got the kids. I nodded. This was my chance. The house would be totally wired, and the phones too, before she'd been gone an hour. I wondered how big a tool Sheila had. Ruth and Sheila must have found some unusual stores. Ruth didn't get in till 4 in the morning. I smiled in the dark. She slid in beside me kinda slow, and easy, trying not to wake me. I wasn't asleep, not at all. I was at war. I took the kids to the park the next day. We played basketball. The kids won, but they cheated. Anyway, it was a fun day. Afterwards, we went to the fiesta the church was having and ate a lot of hot dogs and drank a lot of Cokes and spent a lot of money trying to pitch dimes into a dish. I have never understood the mechanism behind that particular game. The damn dimes never would stay on the damn dish. They'd always bounce and skid off. Well, whatever. When we got back, Ruth wasn't home yet. It was 5 o'clock. The kids went up to play video games and take naps. They were bushed. So was I, if it came to that. I went out to the garage and checked the phone tap. There were 3 calls. One to her sister, one from some guy named Eric confirming some kind of meet-up with him and his brother, and one from guess who? Why, Grime Liquor, of course. Who the hell was Eric? Well, I'd be finding that out sooner or later. The one from Grime Liquor was the most interesting, at least to me. Hello, said Ruth. Hi, it's me. Can you talk? He said. Yeah, my wimpy husband is with the kids at the park. Jesus, that man is such a baby, said my wife. He made me feel so bad last night. What's going on? He said. Last night he was crying. Can you believe it? I know he loves me. I know he's about as whipped as they come. But crying like that. He actually made me feel bad for him. Jesus, how many times have I told him he isn't going to lose me? Hank, I know I promised you sex and to you alone, but I'm going to have to let him have me once in a while. He just can't handle it the way it is, she said. It's not fair to him. We screwed up, and I have to try and make it right by him. Jesus, what kind of chicken did you marry for heaven's sake? Said Grimelicker. Hank, he's a good guy. He doesn't understand what's happening to him. I have to bring him along slowly, so he doesn't get all crazy on us. You want to stay with Margaret, so she doesn't screw you in a divorce. I have to stay with Tom, at least for now because of your situation. I have to deal with his insecurities at my end, Hank. I'm gonna have to let him have mercy sex every now and again. It just has to be. You know, I told him to go out and find himself a woman, but he's too damn proud and moral for that. You and I are going to have to cool it for a few days too, while I build his confidence back up. Okay, she said. I just can't have him bawling all of the time. Jesus, how I wish now that he hadn't walked in on us that day. Okay, do what you think is best. By the by, did Eric call you? Yes, the games are on. A week from Saturday. I thank you for that. It ought to be a blast, she said. They talked about me and their plans for me for the next 5 minutes or so, said their goodbyes, and hung up. Interesting, I thought. I get to have a mercy sex. Like I would even want to touch the foul flesh of that snake. But it was going to be interesting seeing her try to get me to. She got home by 6:30. I was surprised. But then, she had told Grimelicker that they'd be cooling it for a few days. She was very nice to me. Hi, honey, got something for you. But you can't have it until later, she said, giggling. Huh, really? I said. I was actually wondering what it was. Charlie and Irene came in to see what their mom had gotten at the store. She produced presents for both of them. A video game for Charlie and a kid's watch for Irene. Irene had lost her watch a few days before, so this was a welcome surprise for her. The kids jumped for joy. It was the first time in a week she'd shown them any real interest. I guess they were hoping. Dinner was noisy. It was almost like old times. For everyone but me, that is. The kids in bed. Ruth all of a sudden was all giggly and smiley again. Of course, I knew what it was a prelude to. But I played along. Hey, big guy, she said to me finally. She took a seat across from me at the table. I talked to Hank today. My head swiveled. She'd surprised me. Yes, I told him he and I had to cool it for a while. I told him you deserved better than you'd been getting, she said. She waited for my reaction. I was so surprised I didn't have one ready. Anyway, I see you're kinda surprised. Well, do me a favor and come on up to our room in a few minutes, okay? I want to give you your surprise. I looked askance at her. I pretty well knew it had something to do with my supposedly getting lucky, but not exactly what. I nodded. Okay, I said, feigning ignorance of what was up. I puttered around for 5 minutes or so and headed upstairs. I made enough noise so as to give her a heads up that I was coming. What greeted me upon entering the room was an ambush. Candles, and I could smell my favorite perfume. The latter had always enslaved me before. But her biggest gun was the lingerie she was wearing. Her nakedness was clearly visible under it. I stood there pretty much transfixed. Cat got your tongue, big guy, she said. She was sure she had me. I was about to disappoint her big time. I looked her up and down, looked her in the eyes, turned and walked out. I hadn't spoken a word. I was almost to the bottom of the stairs when she caught up with me. Tom, what's the matter? I wanted to make it up to you. I mean the way I've treated you lately. Come on back up and let me prove to you that I love you, she said. I'm not your big guy anymore, Ruth. I guess I'm a chicken as you've called me more than once lately. And I ain't settling for no mercy sex. I still got a little pride left that you haven't yet trampled in the dirt. But tell you what, you get on the phone right now and tell Grimelicker that you're through with him and his forever, and that you're quitting your job at that cheap dealership, and I will call it all square, and then maybe I can think that we can try and start over. How's that? I said. I knew she wouldn't do it, of course. I'd heard what she'd said on the phone. Tom, this is a bona fide offer. It's no mercy sex. I want you. I know what I've said. I don't know what I was thinking. I was wrong. Come on back up. You won't regret it, she begged. Make the call or I don't want you, I dared her. Okay, Tom, if that's the way you want it. Forget it, she said. I wanted to make things right with you. But you don't seem to be able to deal with what is. It's only sex with Hank, but you may be forcing me to make it into something more. Now, that's the wife I've come to know and understand lately, I said. Don't worry. Right now you've got me by the balls, Ruth. I won't rock the boat. But I ain't making love to someone who doesn't love me, and that's all there is to it. She stomped out and upstairs. She was clearly not happy that she couldn't entice me. It was Wednesday morning. I'd worked hard the previous day. I'd had to get my hands real dirty on the job. That, along with the kids at night, and well, I was pretty well thrashed. So maybe it's not too surprising that I awoke startled to see and feel my wife on top of me. What the? I said, wiping sleep out my eyes as I sat up, forcing her away from me. What are you doing? I said. Helping you out, Tom, and you still are my big guy. No matter what you think, she insisted. No, Ruth, not while you still have anything to do with grime liquor, I said. Period. Okay, Tom, if that's the way you want it. I tried, she said. She actually seemed genuinely disappointed. And I wish you'd quit calling him names. He's a good guy. He feels as bad as I do about you catching us that day. He really likes you, you know? He told me that he hopes you, and he can be friends at some point in the future. Get this, Ruth. He will always be grime liquor to me, period. He and I will always be mortal enemies no matter what happens to us. You tell him that. I'll be your legal husband, Ruth, because like I say, you've got me by the balls on account of the kids. But I will not be your lover. I will not lower myself to begging you for a mercy sex. None of that is happening. You want me to go to the store and buy bread? I'll go. You need an escort to the ball so you can screw your sex toy. I'm there for you. But don't expect me to like it or love you. Okay, whatever love I once held for you, Ruth, and it was a lot if you care to know, is dead now, I said. For the first time since the blow-up, I think I saw tears forming behind the facade that she'd been showing to me. During the next few days, it was cool around the house. The enthusiasm that the kids had had just days before had wilted as their mother returned to form. It was Friday evening. I got a special request from Ruth. Tom, I need you to take the kids to the zoo tomorrow. They've been asking. I'm having a meeting here at the house that can't be interrupted. Am I understood? She said. I snickered. I remembered her promise not to flaunt it in my face. Well, what the hell was this? Why don't you just tell me you need your privacy to screw grime liquor? I said. You're not kidding anybody. Actually, I'm not, she said. Then it came to me. I remembered the conversation with the Eric guy. It was him and his brother that she was going to screw. I was sick to my stomach. Something had to break pretty soon or I would. Fine, I said. Whatever. I was actually happy. I was going to get it all recorded. Maybe this was the break I was hoping for. She was overconfident. A bad thing when you were screwing somebody over, somebody like me. The kids and I had a ball. I like the big cats. But Charlie made us go back to the elephants twice. It was a long walk back up that hill. Irene loved the flamingos best. We got back at dark. The house stunk of sex. Ruth was still in the shower. I could hear the water running. I was putting together a quick dinner for two very tired children. Hi, kids, said Ruth. How was the zoo? She was buoyant. Good, Mom, said Irene, not looking up from her mashed potatoes. Yeah, Mom, said Charlie. I like the elephants best, he said. Really? Said Ruth. I like the elephants too. Charlie smiled. But Irene seemed to be ignoring the proceedings. Which did you like best, Irene? I don't know. Everything, I guess. Just being with Dad and Charlie mostly, she said. You should have come too, Mommy. Whatever revenge I was going to be able to visit upon this woman in the coming days and weeks, none of it was going to sting my soon-to-be ex-wife more than those words to her from our daughter. Ruth's face paled. Now she was now going to be forced to apologize and lie. I actually felt great at watching her feel sad. I butted in. Your mom had a very important business meeting that needed her deep involvement, kids. She just couldn't be with us. Right, Ruth? I said. She looked at me strangely. Oh my yes, I wanted to be with you guys, she said. The kids all but passed out as soon as their heads hit the pillow. Ruth and I were getting ready for bed. We still shared the same room, same bed, same everything. We just didn't touch each other. You won't let me give you a mercy sex, Tom? How about one in gratitude for what you said to the kids for me? She said. Nope, I said. Tom, listen, you filthy woman. You know the deal. Tell Grime Liquor to go to hell and take his job with him, and then maybe we might be able to do something. Until then, don't waste my time, I said. I slid into bed and moved to the far side where I let the Sandman take over. The day was Sunday. I got my marching orders early. Tom, we have to go to a party tonight. You said you'd be my escort to these things if I needed you. Well, I do, she said. No problem, I said. Which street do you want to be dropped off to? She looked at me for a second and said, The Coopers. What? Grime Liquors. I nearly screamed. You promised, Tom, she said. I'm holding you to it. Let me ask you, Ruth. Would it do any good for me to hold you to your marriage vows? They qualify as promises, don't they? She all but sneered at the analogy. Finally, she just ignored me. Are you taking me or not? Why, yes, dear, I said. I keep my word and be your unwilling pimp. That was uncalled for, she retorted. You can't be serious, I said, and I walked off. I was going to take her to the party all right, but I had my own agenda. It was going to be hosted by the man who was cucking me, but I didn't give a shit about that. I was looking at this as an opportunity. I was going to be talking to the man's wife. That is if I had the chance, and I couldn't foresee a scenario where I wouldn't. That the two of them would allow me to get that close to his wife was perhaps an indication of their confidence in themselves. Their confidence was misplaced. Ruth wore a red sheath dress that hugged her curves exquisitely. She smelled great. Her hair looked great. Her come-screw-me heels were 5 inches. I actually got a hard-on looking at her. The pearls she wore were real. I had given them to her on our first anniversary. They were a token of my absolute love and commitment. The ride over was quiet in the main, but I couldn't get over her wearing the pearls I'd given her on that long-ago anniversary. I had to say something. "I remember those pearls," I said. "I gave them to you on our first anniversary. They were given with all of the love I had, every last ounce of it. They are one of the loveliest things I own," she said. "I remember when you gave them to me. I wore them to honor you tonight. No matter what you think. If you honored me at all, you wouldn't be making me part of this farce, Ruth. Just don't run off and screw him tonight, okay? If you do, it would be his last day on earth, and I will make you watch. It's my promise to you, and unlike you, I keep my promises." She looked over at me. She wore an exasperated expression. "Of course there won't be anything like that happening tonight, Tom. His wife will be there. Oh, and I don't have to tell you to be careful what you say around her. I mean, if she divorces him, Tom, I'll be doing the same to you. Just remember that. Remember the children." Her playing the custody card really pissed me off. I turned to look at her. It was dark in the car, but I am sure that she felt my stare. She had to say it. "Tom, I know things are rocky for us right now, but I am still hoping that in time you will come around, and we can be like we were, like we should be," she said. I was white-knuckling the steering wheel. This had to end soon, this charade. We arrived, and were ushered into the backyard where a substantial number of people were already gathered. The smell of the barbecue was enticing in spite of my frame of mind. I hadn't eaten since the previous evening, and the most primal of Maslow's hierarchical needs was controlling me. The voice behind me chilled me. "Hello, Tom," said Grimelicker. I hope we can start becoming friends tonight. It would be to both our benefits. I mean that sincerely." I turned and looked the man up and down. I was absolutely floored by the arrogance of his words. The two of them had to have planned this assault on my mind. They had to be trying to brainwash me, but the sliminess of it made my skin crawl. I turned away and meandered among the guests. I didn't know any of them. I didn't want to. Well, not until I met her. "Hi," she said. "I'm Anna. Anna White. You're not from the dealership, are you?" "No, just escorting tonight," I said. I inclined my head to where Ruth was talking to a small group of young men. I wondered idly if she was trying to score, or if they were. I realized I really didn't give a damn. I was there to see Grimelicker's wife, and feel her out as to how to destroy the two adulterers if I could. "Really? You seemed lost," she said. "Anyway, I'm lost and have no escort. I'm a long-time college friend of Margaret's. She said I might meet some eligible men here tonight. So far, no luck though. Is she your wife?" she said, indicating Ruth across the yard. "Yes, for now," I said. Now why did I say that? I didn't know. Yes, I did. I wanted to get to know this woman that I had just met 1.3 minutes ago. "Really? Problems?" she said, obviously surprised by my words and unemotional tone. "Big and bad ones," I said. "But let me apologize. I didn't come here to vent. Like I said, I'm escorting her. We have kind of an arrangement." Anna nodded. "Well then, why don't you buy a girl a drink?" she said. "Thrilled to," I said. She took my arm and led me toward the makeshift bar. I got my martini. She got a Manhattan. We moseyed over toward the wall that separated the yards in the fairly upscale subdivision. The yard was large and featured a small pool and sundeck in one area separated by a large grassy patch from the patio with its barbecue pit. I didn't notice it, but 2 sets of eyes were on us. Myself and Anna, that is. "I think they're watching us," said Anna. I had been so caught up in talking to her, getting to know her, that I really had forgotten why I was there. "Who?" I said, looking up. "Your wife and our host," she said. "Is he the one?" "Huh. I don't know what you mean," I said. "The one your wife is cheating with?" she said. "Is it that obvious?" I said. "It is now. Margaret has suspected him of cheating on her for a long time. Now we know with whom. I'm a lawyer, Tom. I really am Margaret's friend from college. We both got our undergrad degrees at Stanford, but where she got her MA in the history of art from there as well, I went off to law school at Northwestern. We stayed in contact though. We're like sisters. Stanford, Northwestern. I'm impressed. I'm an engineer, Caltech, I said. Ooh, baby, now I'm impressed. Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, and all that, right? Right, but I'm into logistical engineering, not space science. You know, designing systems to get product to wherever as fast and as economically as possible? She smiled. No, but it sounds impressive. Her laugh made me feel good. So what are your plans to handle your situation, Tom? She said. The conversation had turned serious. Attorney-client privilege? I said. If you hire me, she said. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a C-note. I passed it to her. She folded it and stuffed it in her bra. I smiled at that. Consider yourself hired, I said. I want out of the marriage, but I want custody of my children. Anything less is not an option. I'll live with her, if I have to, for as long as necessary to make sure she doesn't come between me and them. Want to meet Margaret? She said. I certainly do, I said. Halfway to the house, we were intercepted by Ruth. Hi, honey, she said. Will you introduce me to your friend? Ruth, this is Anna. Anna, this is Ruth, my wife. Can I borrow my husband for a moment? Said Ruth. Certainly, said Anna. Ruth led me to the edge of the patio. She was smiling to beat the band, but her words were a warning. Remember our deal, she said. No naughtiness on your part tonight. Are we clear? We're clear. But you're talking to all of those men. Certainly, I can talk to people too, right? You even said that I should look elsewhere if I wanted or needed relief, right? That stopped her. You're looking to bed her? Said Ruth. She's at least 5 years older than you. Find someone younger for goodness sakes. Oh, I get it. I can have a woman on the side, so long as she meets with your approval. I guess you really do think you have me by the balls, don't you? I said, as sarcastically as I could. Oh, please tell me, Missy, when is dumb Massa gonna free the slaves? She shot me a searing look and walked off. I watched as I saw her sidle up to Hank. He looked at her, looked around, and shooed her away. It was clear he didn't want any complications tonight. I had to smile at that. It was a small victory for my side, but it was a victory nonetheless. Having rejoined Anna, we headed into the house, into the kitchen. A beautiful woman 10 years my junior was mixing some more salad. Margaret, I have a friend for you to meet, said Anna, as she presented me to the other victim of my wife and her husband. Margaret, this is Tom Carter. His wife works for your husband and, oh, sleeps with him. Her eyes darted in my direction, but she remained calm. She wiped her hands on the apron she was wearing. I take it you're not happy with the situation either, she said. She was not smiling, but she was under control. I sensed that she was a strong woman and totally the superior of her worser half. You take it right, but I can't do much until, and unless I can get full custody of my babies. I will not let her have them in any possible scenario, I said. I see. And if I divorce shithead, then she'll divorce you and take the kids, and so we have a problem to solve. Is that it? I was more than a little surprised at the quick-wittedness of the woman. Grimelicker should have been thrilled to be hers instead of screwing other men's wives and risking losing her. Yes, that's about it, I said. Well, we've got time, and I have some other issue to resolve myself before I lower the boom on him. Why don't we talk about how we might be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, she said. I'm sure you already know that Anna is a lawyer and a good one, and she has influence. We can find a way that will satisfy both of us, I'm sure. We talked for some little time, but Anna and I had to get back to the party before the 2 bad people decided that they had miscalculated. Back in the yard, we headed for the barbecue to get ourselves a couple of plates. We hadn't been noticed. Anna and I ate and talked about everything. Everything, that is, except the problem. She was a mesmerizing woman. At one point, Ruth actually joined us and all was lovey-dovey and pleasantries. It was surreal. Anna and I hit it off. Nothing sexual or anything, but we were comfortable with each other. The good news about that was it apparently pissed my wife off. I guess nominally allowing me to find a woman on the side and experiencing the reality of same was not the same. I was actually looking forward to seeing what was going to be what when we got home. I was certain I was in for the 3rd degree. I was disappointed. She never even mentioned Anna. I wasn't sure whether that was a bad or a good thing. I didn't push it. We went to bed. She offered herself. I turned away. A little while later, I felt rather than heard her sniffling. I felt nothing for her. It was 2 weeks later that I decided to call Anna for an appointment. The night of the party, she had given me her card. It was time to use it. Her office in town was kind of far from my place of work and even farther from the house, but I figured that that was probably a good thing. Otherwise, I might have been finding my way up her way to have lunch with her too often. I didn't need that particular complication in my life right at that moment. Go right in, sir, said the 20-something receptionist. I went in and took the proffered seat. So, James, from your call I guess it's time to go for it, she said, setting the tone with that preamble. Yes. I have written up what I know about what they have been doing. I also taped phone calls, and I've written down what the children have told me about, how shall I say it, her marginal neglect. If that makes any sense, I said. Okay, I'll take all you've got and start building the case. I won't kid you. It could be tough getting full custody for you, but I have a PI I sometimes use. He can get us stuff that could likely be of benefit. How are you fixed financially? Can you afford him? Over the next little while, she laid it on me about the potential costs, my possible options in terms of the law, and the possible pratfalls that we might encounter if we got the wrong judge. Okay then, get your PI on the job muy pronto, I said. Also, whatever else happens that I find out, I will deliver ASAP after I get it. Good. What are you doing this evening? She said, surprising me. Nothing special. Ruth's gonna be home. She let me know she would be. She's planning to go out tomorrow though, but I don't know exactly where. I think she may be meeting a couple of guys, brothers, for sex. I'm pretty sure she's already sampled them once, but I'm not positive. One of them's named Eric, I think. Hey, you might sick the PI on her for that one. I said, already ahead of you there. Consider it done, she said, smiling. I was feeling good. Anyway, if you're free, how about dinner? She said on me. Huh, dinner? On you? Absolutely not, I said. Her face fell. I'm sorry, I thought that. I am so sorry, she started to say. Absolutely not. It's going to be on me all the way, I said. The relief on her face was palpable. Good, she said. Wonderful. She took one of her cards and began writing on the back of it. Here's my address and cell. 7. Okay, 7 it is, I said. I was thinking how Ruth was going to react to my telling her I had a meeting tonight. It was going to be interesting. Hell, it was going to be fun. I was home on time, and the kids ran to me. Mom is cooking a big dinner for tonight, Daddy, said Charlie. My favorite, spaghetti and meatballs. I laughed. Well, good. I'm glad you're happy. Irene looked at me funny. I wondered if I was that transparent. I could swear the kid was clairvoyant. Ruth came out of the kitchen. Oh good, she said. You're a little early. You can help set the table. I shrugged. Not tonight, I said. I have an impromptu meeting I gotta go to. Don't save a plate for me. It's a dinner meeting. The look on her face almost made up for all of the pain she'd caused me over the past few weeks. Almost. Meeting? You never have meetings on your job. What kind of meeting? She said. She was obviously miffed. I think had I stayed that I would have been subjected to a full court press, sexually speaking. She was dressed awfully nicely. The same kind of meeting you have. Like your meeting last Saturday, I said. I could swear Irene was trying to stifle a giggle. Can I talk to you for a minute? She said, heading out toward the backyard patio. I followed her out. What's this about a meeting? She said. You got something going on that I should know about? Her arrogance was almost more than I could stand, let alone believe. But it was funny too, the hypocrisy of it. It's a my business meeting, not a your business meeting, I said. You got him. I'm gonna have him too. Anything else? No, I suppose not. Tom, I was hoping that I was going to try and make things right with us. I know you know I've been trying. You have to admit that. But maybe I haven't been trying hard enough. Anyway, I was going to talk to you tonight. Try and maybe get you to understand what's in my head. How about it? Will you talk to me? She said. Sure, I said. But not now. I have to get ready to go out. Tomorrow's Saturday. Hold your thought. We can talk then if you want. I turned and headed back in. I could feel her eyes boring holes in my back as I went back inside. I collected Anna at 7 on the dot. She was gorgeous. She sure didn't look 5 years older than me, as my wife had guessed, maybe 5 years younger. Well, a gentleman never asks a woman her age, not those who don't want to be introduced to Mr. Frying Pan at any rate. Tall, maybe 5'8", thin, kinda like me. Her hair was the wildest red I'd ever seen, and her freckles were actually beauty marks in her case. But it was the green of her eyes that anyone who met her would have had to notice first. She wore a billowing lavender dress and absolutely no jewelry of any kind. I learned later that not wearing jewelry was her trademark. It was her view that decorations belonged on Christmas trees, not people. I found that interesting, no, intriguing. Seated, she wasted no time. So, how did she react? Said Anna. Huh. Who? I said. Your wife. To you having a date tonight, she said. Oh, well, I told her I had a meeting, I said. She didn't buy it, of course, but that was just too bad. It doesn't even begin to make up for what all she's done to me. Anna smiled. I see. Tom, you're not out with me just to get a little revenge on her, are you? She said. Heavens no. I am out with you. Apart from your obvious beauty, of course, to have a nice, long, leisurely evening with a very interesting lady. But Anna, I have to ask, why are you out with me? I'm not all that great looking, my dazzling personality notwithstanding, I said. She actually snickered. Men, as a group you guys really aren't very bright, I have to say. Tom, I am out with you because you appear to me to be excellent husband material. That I was stunned by the sheer forwardness of her words would be somewhat analogous to observing that the German army had had a little problem at Stalingrad. Huh, I brilliantly retorted. I say what I think, Tom. Always have. Your marriage is on the rocks, and you're hurting. I will not be taking advantage of you, and I won't let you take advantage of me. But, if you're interested, I am too. And Tom, I'm 45 years old. And while I'm not exactly in a hurry, I'm not in a position to be wasting valuable time either, she said. Interesting, Ruth had pretty well pegged her age, but she was only 3 years older than me, not 5. Jesus, I said. She continued. You know, when I first saw you that night at the party, I kind of figured you wrong. You seemed like a guy who was lonely. That's initially why I came on to you. Of course, after we talked, I realized you weren't lonely. You were hurting. There's a difference, not a big one, but a difference nonetheless. Anna, that is the most unbelievable spiel I have ever heard in my life. But, since you put it out there like that, I was figuring on coming on to you at the party too. I mean, as soon as I saw you. And as for being husband material, I could hope to be nothing more. As for actually getting married to you, well, there are the little matters of a divorce that needs to wend its way through the legal system, and also the little matter of us working to see if we really could make it together. However, if first impressions mean anything, I figure to be yours, if you do indeed decide you want me, in 6 to 12 months, that is if there is a God, I said. I swear her smile lighted up the room. I felt good. Ruth was far from my mind. In fact, if someone had mentioned her name to me at that moment, I think I would have asked, Ruth who? I got home at around 10 o'clock. The kids had only been down for a little while. Ruth was waiting for me. She seemed glad that I wasn't getting in late. But she was walking on eggs. How was your meeting? She asked. Not bad, mostly talking, I said. Care to talk about it? She said. No, I said. That obviously did not sit well with her. Do I know her? She said. Told ya, I don't want to talk about the meeting, I said. She just stared at me and let it drop. I'm going to bed, she said. Care to join me? Her final 4 words were said very softly. I'll be up in a little bit, I said. I was wondering if I was going to get the full court press tonight. If there was one thing I could say about Ruth in these troubled days, she was nothing if not unpredictable. I did not get the full court press, but she did try to kiss me on the lips. I think if I had wanted it, she would have spread her legs for me. In fact, I was sure she would have. But she wasn't pushing it. The kids were playing in the yard with a couple of neighborhood kids. It was warm out there, but they had evidently found a spot under our big old elm tree that seemed to do for them. They each had a soft drink that they had scarfed from the frig in the garage. Tom, can we talk now? She said, as I sipped my 3rd cup of coffee of the day. Yeah, I guess, I said. But, I'm telling you up front, Ruth, you've got me by the balls, but I will not willingly accept another man screwing my wife while I'm alive. Not ever. Tom, you've got it all messed up in your head. It's nothing but a kind of emotional release for me with him. I don't love him. He gets his rocks off. I get mine off. He says goodbye. I say goodbye, and we forget about each other until the next time. That all it is. His wife doesn't do it for him. And as you've informed me, I don't do it for you, I said. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was for me to hear that? Tom, I blew it when I said that to you. Isn't true. It wasn't true then, and it isn't true now. I had my head a yard up my butt that day, and She paused and then resumed. Also, he and I, don't screw all of the time. It's actually kinda rare, and you never get sloppy seconds or anything like that if you were wondering. I butted in. How often? I said. How often does Grimelicker stick his meat inside of you? I said. My tone was cold. Tom, what does it matter how often? I want to know, I said, interrupting her. How often? You said we were going to talk. I'm not here to listen to a prepared speech. If we're going to talk, you are going to answer my questions, hopefully honestly. Maybe twice a week. It varies. Tom, I need more than you can give me. I'm not putting you down. And I would love for you to take me, and take me often. Take me now. I was wrong before. I have discovered just how much I really do need you. Tom, I'm begging you. I wish I hadn't said all of those stupid things to you. Tom, I'm hoping that when we are done talking here that you will take me upstairs and take me. I need you. And it's not about any mercy sex either. Please believe that, she said. She said it so sincerely, but I think she had just discovered the truth of it herself. I was silent for a full minute. To her credit, she was smart enough to keep her mouth shut and wait for me to form my response. You call twice a week rare? That used to be us. Of course it's zero now. I mean for us. Did you consider our love making a rare event? I didn't wait for her to answer. Ruth, for 16 years and more you have been the love of my life. But now, after all of the things you have done to me and continue to do to me, like telling me to deal with your adultery or leave, well, I just don't know if there is any love for you left in me. I have told you more than once now that the only way for me and you to try and rebuild our almost totally destroyed relationship is for you to excoriate and dump grime liquor. But no, you are still not only letting him screw you, you are still trying to get me to accept it as being okay. Like you were playing bridge with the girls or something. It's not a card game, Ruth. It's the most intimate thing that a married couple can do. You're living in a stinking dream world. Make that a nightmare world, and it's killing us. It's you that has to make up your mind, Ruth, and make it up fast. There is no alternative. Think about it, Ruth. The clock is ticking. I got up and walked out. The gauntlet had been thrown down. But I did not trust her enough to accept the fact that she wanted me. What if it was just another plan to get me to fall in line? Was she really trying to patch things with me because she loved me? Later I would come to know, to realize, just how far from any such thing happening we actually were. I turned to look at her as I left the kitchen. She looked frustrated and argued out. I had to think about the kids. They came first. At all events, they had to come first. Both Ruth and Anna had to understand that about me. I was their daddy, and I loved them fiercely and unconditionally. On Monday, work was slow. Good thing because I got a call at 11:13 a.m. that chilled me. Mr. Carter? Said the voice. Yes? I'm calling from Mercy General, on 9th Street. Mr. Carter, your daughter is here. There's been an accident. What? The terror that instantly consumed me shattered my reserve. How? When? Mr. Carter, we need you to come down immediately, please, said the voice. I'm on my way. I yelled to my secretary that I would be a Mercy General, and then I was out the door. On my way, I called my wife at the dealership. The office aide said she'd stepped out at 11 o'clock. She took my message. I was pissed. Where was she when our baby was in the hospital? Angry didn't begin to cover it. But I would deal with Ruth later. I left a message on her cell and another on the home phone just in case she was there screwing him. But right now it was Irene that mattered. She needed me. My wife called me back at 1:45 from her workplace. Tom, you called? I got your message from the boss secretary, she said. Yeah, well there's one on your cell too, and another one on the home phone. Where the hell have you been? I wasn't being nice. I didn't feel nice. What's the matter with you? I called you as soon as I was free, she started. Shut up and get over here to Mercy Hospital now. Irene's hurt. Bad hurt. I hung up. At that moment, I didn't give a damn if I ever saw that woman again. I was certain she'd been with her lover. If so, she would be lucky to look the same by nightfall as she had when she left for work that morning. Irene had been hit by a car when running after a ball that had somehow gone over the fence. She'd run out onto the street to fetch it when the car had come, witnesses said, seemingly out of nowhere, and she'd been hit. She had a broken leg and had lost a deal of blood. I donated on the spot and then been forced to wait. Ruth joined me a half hour after I'd hung up on her. How is she? She said, coming up to me and looking concerned. And where's Charlie? Well, how appropriate, I thought. She's genuinely concerned. I don't know. She's still being operated on. The hospital tried to call you first, I mean before me, but they didn't have any more luck than I did. Where were you? I said. And Rose is taking care of Charlie. Rose was our next door neighbor. 60, living alone, and great at baking pastries and sharing them with us and other neighbors. I was working on a project with Hank. It's not what you think, really. I do have a job. Yeah, and so do I, but they got hold of me in an emergency. Why was your cell turned off? I said. I was not being nice, not at all. She started to cry. Well, screw her. Finally, the double doors swung open and a doctor in green scrubs came out and up to us. She'll be okay, he said. You can see her in a few minutes. They're wheeling her in from the operating room now. She will need to be here for a few days, but I expect a full recovery. I sagged down onto the waiting room couch. Ruth joined me. Thank you, doctor. How soon? Maybe 5 minutes. Not long. The nurse will come get you both, he said. The nurse did come get us. The meeting with my only half-conscious baby was tearful and happy and relieved. Ruth especially bawled like I had never seen her bawl. I knew then that she'd been screwing her boyfriend. There was no doubt whatsoever about it, and the guilt was killing her. I stayed in Irene's hospital room the whole day, except for a brief trip to the cafeteria for some coffee and a couple of packages of saltines. I never left it. Ruth left for about an hour. She said she had something to do, and it couldn't wait, but that she would be back shortly. I didn't even really notice her leaving. I didn't care. The following morning, I called into work and Ruth didn't, but she didn't go in either. We had barely spoken to each other since our meeting in the waiting room the day before. We had been sent home after 8 p.m. the previous night with Irene resting comfortably. I had the feeling that Ruth had something to tell me, but I wasn't interested in anything but Irene. And Ruth had the good sense to realize that and wait. I had a call on my cell. It was Anna. I started to tell her about Irene, but she interrupted me. Tom, I know about Irene. Marcus, the PI, told me. I have some things to show and tell. You need to see me as soon as you are sure Irene's going to be fine. I promised to drop by the next day. Irene was feeling better and was more animated than I thought possible given the cast on her leg and her overall trauma. I sighed, relieved as I could be under the circumstances. I stayed until late afternoon. I wondered what news Anna had for me. I was afraid I knew. I was right. I did know. Anna, as was her usual modus operandi, got right down to business. Tom, she screwed them yesterday, she said. Marcus got pics and sound. They're dead meat. Anna, I think you've got your pronouns mixed up. Them? I said. Yes, Tom. She was the centerpiece of a group. Mr. Cooper and a couple of young guys. You were mentioned often, but not by Ruth. She tried several times to stop them from talking about you, unsuccessfully. I stared at her in disbelief, but that's not right either. I did believe it. My hatred for the lot of them had reached celestial proportions. While my baby was in dire straits, she was out banging the neighborhood. Anna. Yes, she said. File today. I want out. And get me custody. Nothing else matters. Get me custody. I got up and stormed out. I'd have to go back to sign papers and do all of the right things. But I had something else to do first, and it couldn't wait. Ruth had not gone to work, nor had she yet spoken to me except for the most necessary stuff for the past day and a half. I assumed she had taken a few days off because of Irene. I was at least partly wrong. I came into the house without even closing the door behind me. I hunted her down. Where were you really while our baby was in danger? I yelled. She was sitting on the couch in the living room with a martini, apparently not her first. At any rate, I assumed it was a martini. She'd obviously been crying. I quit my job. I cut it off with grime liquor too, she said. It was the first time she'd ever verbally insulted her lover in my presence. To answer your question, and I will answer any others you think to ask, I was screwing him and 2 other guys while our baby was in danger. That's why no one could get me on the phone. My shame will never die over this. I assure you of that, she said. Too little too late, but she was leveling with me really for the first time. My emotions suddenly morphed from cold hatred to simple anguish. She didn't deserve any sympathy, but I could see she wasn't asking for any either. She was suffering in the depths of her very soul, suffering bad. It's too late for us, Ruth. I want custody. I will pay you reasonable alimony until you can get a decent job, but we're quitting. You've sold us out to your lusts, and there is no going back, I said. I know, she said. I hope that at some time in the future, you, Irene and you, can forgive me, and Charlie too. I don't deserve it, but I will live in that hope anyway. It's all I have now. She was saying the right things. I would allow free visitation for her. But any lovers she would ever entertain in the future were a non-happening. But I knew for certain that that wasn't going to be an issue anyway. That was very clear to me from the way she was acting. I will be keeping the house, Ruth, because of the kids. I will give you fair value for your equity in it. That should allow you to find a place. I mean, after you get a job, I said. It's just a shame that it took a near tragedy like this to turn things around. I have to say, though, that what you were doing to me, quite apart from Irene's near death, was and is a tragedy too, albeit of a different kind. You should have woken up before this. There might have been a chance for us then. She ran up the stairs. She had to be alone. The next day, at my suggestion, she went to Anna's office to sign the necessary documents. It spared her the embarrassment of being served. I had calmed down, and she was cooperating. The divorce would be final in 6 months. The divorce underway and uncontested was a done deal. I helped Ruth move into an apartment near the junior high school that Irene would be attending next year, and Charlie the year after that. We had agreed on the pickup and delivery routine for them with no problem. She would deliver them in the morning. I I would take care of the pickup in the afternoons. They would visit her on alternate weekends as convenience and practicalities might dictate. Holidays we would work out later. I really had no objections to the children seeing their mother as often as each liked. Kids needed both parents, and I was fully aware of that. Ruth ended up getting a job at a local supermarket. She'd be making $14 hourly after a year's time. That, coupled with the usual union benefits, had her pretty well fixed up financially. I agreed to pay her rent for that first 15 months to give her the head start she'd need. I know many would castigate me for not slaughtering her for all she had done. My brothers in the military, if they knew, would already have handled the problem, and that summarily. But that just isn't me. 2. She was the mother of our babies, and she was more than sorry for how she'd acted, and especially toward me, as it turned out. But there was still one loose end that had to be handled. Oh yeah, Mr. Cooper had to pay. I couldn't just shoot him, although I considered it. Anyway, I knew that sooner or later an opportunity to deal with grime liquor would turn up, and it did. The day my divorce was final as it happened, we were standing outside the courthouse, the final decree having been granted 20 minutes earlier. Anna and I were in the tree-shrouded parking area. We were talking. Our wedding, yes, we decided on getting married, was a month away. You know, she said, Margaret has found several accounts that at first she knew nothing of. Marcus has been doing some hunting, and good, old hubby has more than $100 grand squirreled away. She's finally ready to dump him and screw him financially. I will be having him served Monday at his work. Margaret wants it to be loud, public, and embarrassing. I laughed out loud. Good. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, I said. I looked to the left and noticed Ruth coming out of the building. 6 seconds later, grime liquor emerged. He was walking close to Ruth as she headed toward her car on the far side of the lot. She walked fast, trying to nudge him away from her as she went, but he wasn't having any. He kept literally hanging over her little body, trying to convince her of something. I knew it couldn't be him wanting to get back with her. She'd made it plain to me that he and his were history, but they were arguing about something. Anna, look at that. I gotta go take care of that, I said. Tom, he's awfully big. Be careful, she said. I smiled. One of these days these women of mine had to get it in their heads that 80-second vets were not to be fooled with, by anybody. Maybe this was the day. Yeah, I'll be careful, I said. I strode quickly to where her car was parked. I intercepted them just as they got there. Got a problem, grime liquor, I said. Huh. Oh, the erstwhile sissy. Tell you what, cuck. Why don't you leave while your teeth are still located in your mouth, he said. Go play with the other girls. Not really good at biology, are you, grime liquor? Let me guess, you were a C student, I said. He snarled and stepped toward me. I backed up to be away from the car. His self-confidence fairly glistened in his shiny pig face. Within range, he unloaded on me. I let the blow land. I wanted the mark for when the cops showed up, and I wanted him to know his best wasn't best enough. I stepped back once more. He'd stung me, but I'd endured worse. His second shot at glory missed by a country mile. I darted low and past him, and when he turned, he was greeted with a typhoon of mayhem. I wasn't counting, but I must have hit him with at least 50 blows to the head and body without suffering a single significant retaliatory blow. I wasn't even breathing hard. He sank like the sun in the west, first to his knees, and then into a semi-fetal position. He was only half conscious. I took a knee beside his head and spoke to him in a low voice, meant only for him and me. Never again come near either Ruth nor anyone else I know and love, or today will only be a prelude to a lifetime of truly untold miseries for you. Got it, grime liquor? I said. His eyes were rolling back into his head, but he spurted a single bloody syllable from his now swelling lips and mouth. K. I led Ruth over to the other side of the car to talk to her. What did A-hole want? I said. A-hole? I thought his name was grime liquor, she said, with a half smile. Oh, well, A-hole is his middle name, I said, chuckling myself at her attempt at humor. Oh, I see. Well, I told him inside that he had to tell his wife what we had done and beg her forgiveness. I told him he had to do it or I would. I gave him 24 hours. He didn't take it well, she said. Huh. I said, too late. His wife is already planning on having him served. She knows everything, I said. She looked at me funny. Really? I thought you told me you were going to leave it to God to punish him, she said. Margaret asked me not to rock the boat. She discovered some things that needed doing first. They've been done. He's finished in more ways than one, I said. You're a pretty tough guy, Tom. I never knew, she said. The Army? Not just the Army, Ruth, the 82nd Airborne. We are the best of the best. I believe it, she said. Anna and I kept dating. We had been through so many intense conversations already that it felt like we skipped the whole awkward getting to know you phase. With Anna, it was easy. For the first time in years, I could just breathe. We moved fast, but it felt right. After just a few months, I knew I wanted to marry her. The timing might have seemed crazy to everyone else. I could hear the whispers from my friends, wondering if I was rushing into something on the rebound. But what they didn't understand was that Anna had already been there through the hardest part of my life. She saw the worst of me and still wanted more. How could I not say yes to that? So, I did. And this time, it feels different. It feels real. Anna was right from the start. She intended to get me, and she did. And I couldn't be happier that she did. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.